The scene opens in complete chaos. Blood stains the ground, bodies lie lifeless, and screams echo all around. In the center of it all, a single warrior stands victorious, his presence commanding fear and respect. A crown is placed upon his head as he claims his new title, King. Just as he takes in his victory, another figure charges at him, aiming to take his life. But the attempt is futile. With a swift and effortless strike, he eliminates the threat. Then, everything fades. The crowned warrior stares at a mask, lost in thought. His mind drifts as a strange feeling washes over him. Before he can process it, darkness engulfs him. He feels weightless, like he's sinking into an endless ocean. A distant voice whispers through the void, telling him to seek the light in his new life. When he opens his eyes again, everything is different. The once mighty king is now an infant, cradled in the arms of two unfamiliar people. They gaze at him with love and joy, calling him by a name he doesn't recognize, Arthur. His father, with a warm smile, tells him to call him Dad. But Arthur is bewildered. Who are these people? Why is he here? It doesn't take long for him to piece it together. He has died and been reborn in another world. And to make matters worse, he's powerless. No strength, no authority, just a helpless baby in the care of strangers who truly believe he is their son. The days pass, and despite his frustration, Arthur is forced to live the life of a normal child. His father dotes on him, playing with him constantly, while his mother showers him with endless affection. He doesn't understand it. He was once a ruler, a warrior feared by many. Now he can't even lift his own head properly. His new life feels like a cage, a prison where he has no control over anything. He tries to shake the feeling that this is all just a bad dream, but deep down, he knows it's real, and it's only going to get stranger. One afternoon, Arthur watches as his father trains outside. The man is powerful, effortlessly wielding magic to move massive stones. Arthur is in awe. This world has forces beyond his understanding. Just as he's processing this new discovery, his father makes a mistake, injuring himself with a stray rock. Before Arthur can react, his mother rushes over and heals him with high-level magic. Arthur is stunned. If this kind of power exists, then he needs to learn how to use it. The next morning, his father heads into the forest to train again, but this time, he isn't alone. A group of people gathers around him, clearly his allies. Arthur watches from a distance, realizing that combat is a normal part of life in this world. When his father returns home later that day, he's greeted warmly by his wife and son. Arthur studies his father closely, observing every detail. He notices the blood on his hands and the weapon strapped to his back. In this world, it seems carrying weapons is completely normal, maybe even necessary. That means one thing: he needs to grow stronger, fast. Despite his frustration, he finds himself growing attached to this family. Their kindness is foreign to him, something he never experienced in his previous life. He recalls the times he had to fight for survival, always alert, never truly resting. Here, he sleeps in a warm bed, completely safe. It's unfamiliar, but not entirely unwelcome. As time passes, Arthur starts crawling, slowly gaining control over his body. His parents cheer him on, watching closely to make sure he doesn't hurt himself. One day, he catches sight of his reflection in a mirror. Staring at his small, unfamiliar face, he still can't fully accept this identity. The name Arthur, the helpless body, it all feels surreal. One night, after being tucked into bed, he waits until his mother leaves before making his move. Carefully, he crawls out of bed, determined to explore. His goal is the library. He has seen his parents go in there many times, and if he's going to understand this world, books are the best place to start. Slowly and silently, he makes his way there, avoiding detection. When he finally reaches the library, he pulls out a book and starts reading. Knowledge is power, that much he knows. As he flips through the pages, he discovers that this land is called Decadent and is divided into 3 kingdoms. The first is Dwarven Kingdom, a kingdom of people who live underground. The second is Dwarven Kingdom, home to the elves who reside deep within the forests. And lastly, there is Sabin, the kingdom he now belongs to. Unlike his previous world, where power had to be seized, here the throne is passed down through bloodlines. Curious, he grabs another book, but in his eagerness, he knocks both to the floor. He sighs, realizing this world is far less advanced than his old one. Its technology is primitive, but one thing stands out: magic. This world runs on mana, a force that can be inherited and used in two primary ways: enhancement and summoning. Enhancers strengthen their bodies, increasing their speed, power, and durability. Summoners, on the other hand, can manipulate mana to shape reality as they see fit. Arthur thinks back to the healing magic his mother used. If mana follows these two main paths, then there must be exceptions. He flips through more pages, searching for answers. The key to mastering mana, he learns, lies in something called the essence of mana. Most mages begin training around puberty, slowly gathering mana into a single core within their bodies. Arthur's mind races. This concept isn't entirely foreign to him. In his past life, he had mastered controlling his inner energy, using it as a weapon. If he could do that before, then surely he could do it again. Determined, he closes his eyes and focuses. Slowly, he attempts to gather the mana within his body, guiding it toward a single point. It's difficult, but not impossible. He can feel it, the energy responding to his will. But before he can push further, his mother suddenly appears, her voice filled with worry. She scolds him for sneaking off and warns him not to do it again. However, her expression shifts as she looks at him closely, almost as if she senses something different about him. A small smile forms on her lips as she gently pats his head. Arthur had no choice but to accept his reality. Stuck in the body of a baby, he felt trapped. Even the smallest things, like getting his diaper changed, reminded him how powerless he was. He needed to get stronger, fast. 2 years passed, and his mother often wrote in her diary, always praising him as the most beautiful and intelligent child. But there was one thing that bothered her. He had never smiled, not even once. Meanwhile, outside, Arthur was practicing with a stick, swinging it like a sword while his father watched. Impressed, his father called his mother to see, but she was furious. She scolded him, saying Arthur was too young to be handling weapons. Arthur quickly realized that in this world, mothers held all the power. One day, they took a trip to the city, and Arthur couldn't contain his excitement. He observed everything carefully, taking in all the new sights. He saw people using weapons, strange glowing stones, and even real magic. It was a lot to process, but he knew one thing. This world had power he needed to understand. As they headed home, exhaustion took over and he fell asleep, thinking about his new family. Despite feeling suffocated by this life, he couldn't deny that they genuinely cared for him. It made him wonder, wasn't this what family was supposed to be like? His past life flashed in his mind, the orphanage, the loneliness. Feeling warmth and love like this was something he had never experienced before. That night, while he slept, his mother spoke softly to him, mentioning how she noticed his habits, sneaking off to read books, pretending to be asleep when he wasn't. She knew he'd eventually want to explore the outside world. The next day, Arthur watched his father use magic to move stones. Seeing it firsthand made Arthur realize how lucky he was. He had a living example to learn from. His father's magic was powerful, and Arthur was sure now he had inherited the strength of an enhancement-type mage. Arthur's hunger for knowledge grew stronger. He wanted to read more, to understand this world better. When his parents tried to put him to bed, he used his innocent look to convince them to let him stay up and read. His mother resisted at first, but eventually gave in. Over the last 2 years, Arthur had learned a lot, but his biggest discovery was mana cores. He figured out how to gather energy into a single point in his body. It was tough, but his training was finally paying off. Then, disaster struck. A massive explosion rocked the house. His father barely had time to protect his mother before running inside to find Arthur. What he saw left him speechless. His son, not even 3 years old, had managed to control mana essence. Arthur was thrilled by his progress, but before he could process it, wooden beams collapsed toward him. He braced for impact, thinking this was the end, but his parents saved him just in time. His mother cried, overwhelmed by what had happened, but also relieved that Arthur was safe. As he looked at her, something strange happened. His eyes welled up with tears. He had never cried before, never felt this kind of emotion in his past life. He didn't understand why, but he hugged his mother tightly, tears falling freely. For the first time, he truly felt what it meant to be loved. But there was no time to dwell on emotions. Just as things settle down, a terrifying monster is shown. We then flash back to Arthur's previous life, when he was known as King Grey. In this life, he's presiding over a royal court session, delivering judgment to a man who had attempted to assassinate him. Despite the severity of the crime, the royal council has chosen mercy. The man is to be escorted back to his homeland with his family, where his final sentence will be delivered. The man, knowing his fate is sealed, pleads with the court. He admits to attacking the king, but insists the crime is his alone. He begs them not to punish his wife and son. He knows all too well returning to his home country would be a fate worse than death. Accepting his punishment, he asks only that his family be spared. Dropping to his knees, he directs his plea straight to King Grey. The council warns him that a man of his low status has no right to address the king directly. But before they can say more, King Grey steps forward. Without hesitation, he swiftly executes the man's family in front of him. A merciful act in the king's eyes, saving them from endless suffering. Shocked and heartbroken, the man can only bow his head in acceptance, understanding that this was the best outcome he could hope for. Back in the present timeline, a few years have passed. Arthur is now being trained in combat by his father Reynolds. One day, Reynolds tries to give Arthur a pair of gloves identical to his own, but Arthur turns them down. He prefers using a sword, reasoning that with his small body, trying to fight hand-to-hand would get him killed before he could even land a hit. Though it clearly disappoints Reynolds, he had looked forward to passing the gloves down. He respects Arthur's choice and begins training him with a sword instead. After a few exchanges, Reynolds demonstrates how to channel mana into his weapon to enhance its power. Arthur, watching closely, understands the process almost instantly. Mimicking the move, he pours mana into his wooden sword and manages to shatter Reynolds' reinforced training stick in one clean strike. Reynolds is stunned. Later, he confides in Alice, Arthur's mother, telling her that Arthur needs a real teacher, someone who can help him reach his full potential. While Reynolds had always assumed he'd be the one to train his son, it's become clear Arthur is beyond his level. Alice isn't so sure. She offers to teach Arthur magic herself, but Reynolds points out that Arthur's situation is unique. The boy managed to cut through mana-reinforced wood, and he's only 4 years old. Alice is stunned at this revelation, but still hesitant to let her son go. A heated discussion begins, with Arthur quietly watching them. He realizes that emotions often cloud judgment, so he offers a third option. Why don't they all go together? After a long pause, both parents smile, impressed by his maturity. They agree it's a great idea, and begin packing for the journey. Seeing how energetic and excited his parents are brings a genuine smile to Arthur's face. Soon after, the transport arrives. At Reynolds' request, Arthur introduces himself to the people picking them up. Their leader assumes Arthur doesn't recognize him, but Arthur remembers exactly who they are. Adventurers who helped rebuild their home after it was destroyed. They're called the Twin Horns, a group that once included both Reynolds and Alice. Their leader is Adam Crench, and the rest of the team includes Angela Rose, Durden Walker, Jasmine Flamesworth, and Helen Shart. Basically, the kind of names you'd expect from an all-star NBA roster. With everything in order, the journey begins. Arthur can't help but think how primitive this mode of transportation is, compared to the advanced tech he knew in his past life. Still, it's not so bad. He gets to sit next to his mom, which makes the ride surprisingly cozy. They're headed to a city called Cyrus, which should be interesting, but Arthur knows one thing for sure. In this world, danger is always lurking, no matter where you go. That becomes clear when the group sets up camp for the night and is suddenly attacked by monsters. Everyone jumps into action. Watching the fight, Arthur observes that Adam, Helen, and Jasmine are enhancers, while Angela and Durden appear to be casters. After the monsters are wiped out, he's impressed by how well the team fights together. He knows that one day he'll need to be just as strong. Later that night, while eating around the campfire, Arthur reflects that it's silly to expect comfort while traveling, but at least the food is warm and freshly made. Suddenly, Alice sighs deeply. Arthur asks what's wrong, and she says she's full, though Arthur keeps staring at her plate. Alice then notices that Reynolds' arm is injured. She sets her food aside to go heal him, but Helen and Jasmine stop her for a moment, sensing something in the forest. They position themselves to guard while Alice tends to Reynolds' wound using her healing magic. Arthur reflects on how his mother might be a rare type of mage known as an emitter, someone with healing abilities. Since they're so uncommon, emitter mages usually keep a low profile. Healing openly would only make her a target. That realization helps him understand why his parents chose to live quietly, hidden away in the countryside. A few moments later, Alice finishes healing Reynolds. Then, out of the blue, Adam says he wants to get a little workout in before bed and asks Reynolds for permission to take Arthur along for a quick training session. Arthur's caught off guard, but since his dad doesn't object, he doesn't have much choice. Training it is. As they begin, Arthur notices Adam wields a spear. He starts to worry that this might be more than just light exercise, especially since, well, he's only 4 years old. But he decides not to complain. Instead, he keeps his doubts to himself. Adam asks if he's ready. Then he starts channeling mana into his weapon, and Arthur can tell immediately he's not holding back. So Arthur does the same, imbuing mana into both his weapon and legs. That little surprise catches Adam off guard. Wasting no time, Arthur dashes straight at him. Adam tries to block, but in an instant, Arthur vanishes from his line of sight, reappearing behind him. He skids a bit in the dirt but manages to keep his balance. Despite his young age, Arthur keeps up with Adam's attacks until Adam lands a powerful blow that sends him flying. Arthur realizes his body is still way too light. Thankfully, Angela uses her wind magic to gently bring him down, saving him from a rough crash landing. Alice breathes a huge sigh of relief. She was this close to watching her little bonbon get splattered. Arthur thanks Angela, while the rest of the group immediately scolds Adam for going way too hard on a child. Adam tries to defend himself by saying Arthur's a little monster, but that's not enough to get him off the hook. As the group argues, Arthur, still catching his breath, gets startled by Yasmin suddenly appearing beside him. She simply asks, "How did you do that?" Arthur stays quiet. He doesn't really know what to say, but he does recognize that look in her eyes. The look of someone who won't back down until she learns what she wants. The journey continues smoothly after that. Along the way, Arthur keeps training, not just with Adam, but with everyone in the group. He learns a ton and even shares some wisdom from his past life. It's been a truly eye-opening experience. He even shows Yasmin how to enhance her footwork using mana for high-speed movement. Over time, he starts noticing that she's sticking closer to him, something that doesn't bother him at all. Then one day, something unexpected happens. Yasmin finds out it's Arthur's birthday and decides to thank him for everything he's taught her. She gives him a knife as a gift. Arthur is a little surprised, but genuinely grateful. It's clear now she's grown attached to him. As they're talking, the other girls notice and are stunned. Yasmin isn't exactly known for being affectionate with anyone. Alice, watching from afar, teases that it's probably because her son is so charming. Adam calls out that it's time to move, and Alice relays the message to Arthur. But then Arthur notices something. Alice briefly makes a face like something's wrong. He asks her about it, and she quickly brushes it off with a smile, saying, "It's nothing." Still, the way she dodged the question leaves him worried. Later, while traveling through the mountains, the group suddenly gets ambushed by a gang of bandits. Arrows rain down, pinning them in place as enemies begin to surround them. Luckily, Angela steps up and deflects the arrows using her wind magic. Arthur immediately realizes this is a serious situation. That's when the bandit leader steps forward and makes his demand. They're to hand over the woman and the child unharmed or risk lowering their value. He then orders his men to attack from both flanks. Despite the chaos, Alice stays calm, comforting Arthur and telling him she'll protect him. Arthur believes her, and that gives him strength. Durden moves to intercept the enemies attacking from above with his magic, while Reynolds takes the front line with his short-range combat style, supporting the team with everything he's got. Helen fired arrow after arrow at any bandits she could reach, while Adam and Yasmin fiercely held the line, defending the caravans with everything they had. Arthur analyzed the situation. Individually, they had the upper hand, but what really worried him was the sheer number of enemies. The bandits had the numbers, and that strength in unity was starting to take its toll. As the fight dragged on, fatigue began to show. Then, in a brutal move, the bandit leader hurled Reynolds against one of the wagons, leaving him badly wounded. This forced Alice and Arthur to jump out of hiding. Despite his injuries, Reynolds immediately ordered them to stay back. He knew it would be a huge problem if the bandits discovered what kind of power his wife truly possessed. Coughing through the pain, Reynolds looked at Arthur and told him to take his mother and run. Arthur hesitated. He believed he was strong enough to fight, strong enough to stand his ground. But Reynolds shook his head and told him the truth. Alice was pregnant. The news hit Arthur like a bolt of lightning. Everything started to make sense. Her strange behavior, the way she was always holding back. Now he understood. Fueled by a new sense of purpose, Arthur accepted his father's request. Without wasting another second, he grabbed his mother's hand and bolted from the battlefield. The bandit leader, realizing their plan, ordered his men to intercept them. But just as they were about to strike, Reynolds launched forward and landed a massive punch. The leader blocked with his giant axe, but this time Reynolds wasn't holding back. The sheer force of the punch made the man stagger back several feet. Meanwhile, a group of bandits tried to cut off Arthur and Alice's escape, but were taken out just in time. Yasmin and Adam tossed them weapons, yelling for Arthur to keep going, not to look back. The rest of the group followed their lead, throwing everything they had to clear a path for the mother and son. As Arthur sprinted, heart pounding, he couldn't help but reflect. He had taken so much from others in his past life, and now here he was, running to protect what little he had left. He remembered that family he destroyed with his own hands. Maybe this was karma. Just when he thought they'd made it far enough, a hidden enemy struck. A wind mage appeared out of nowhere, casting a powerful spell. Arthur reacted just in time, pushing his mother out of the way, but the spell hit him full force, sending him flying off a cliff. As he fell, time slowed. He didn't plan on dying alone, so he grabbed the dagger tied to his belt, hurled it upward, and managed to catch the wind mage by the leg, dragging the attacker down with him. Back at the battlefield, Angela and Dordan cast their spells, trying to catch Arthur mid-fall. As the wind howled around him, Arthur felt something strange in his chest. Not fear, not pain, something warm. He realized he finally understood what that man meant, why they cried back then. He thought about the family he destroyed, the house he burned to ashes, and how the parents had only been grateful that their child was spared. That man had sacrificed himself to protect the people he loved. Tears welled up in Arthur's eyes. Joy and sorrow twisted together inside him. He remembered his father's words and the fact that he was going to be a big brother, something he never thought he'd experience. It made the tears fall even harder. As the ground rushed toward him, the screen fades. And in the next scene, Arthur's still alive. He awakens in a mysterious forest, somewhere unfamiliar. The first thing he sees is a massive, intimidating beast looming over him. The creature looks him dead in the eyes, says, "Good morning, Arthur," and greets him by name. Arthur is stunned. That's the last thing he expected. Two shadowy figures briefly appear, engaged in a quiet conversation. One of them shares that they've discovered something incredibly beautiful, so rare they might never witness it again. The other figure, sensing danger, wonders aloud whether something terrible is about to happen. The first confirms it will, unless something changes. Elsewhere, Arthur stares at a mysterious creature. Confused and alarmed, he finds himself asking internally what the creature is, and more importantly, why it's here. But the biggest question gnawing at him is whether it's a friend or a threat. Suddenly, the creature twitches. Arthur reacts instantly, launching himself forward to attack. But before he can make contact, the creature casually flicks a finger, swatting him away and sending him flying like a rag doll. Landing hard, Arthur hears the creature speak in a calm, firm tone. It addresses him by name and tells him that he still has a lot to learn. It adds that it isn't his enemy, implying that Arthur may want to ease up on the hostility. The creature then walks over to an odd wall covered in fruit-bearing roots. Plucking a few fruits, it tells Arthur that he must be hungry. Even if he isn't, the creature insists he needs nourishment to regain strength and recover. Arthur attempts to speak, but his pain gets the better of him. The creature remarks that he's lucky to be alive and says that answers will only come after he eats. Accepting the condition, Arthur devours the fruit. Once he finishes, his first concern spills out. He desperately wants to know if his parents are safe. The creature calmly reassures him that they're alive and had continued their journey days ago. To prove it, it conjures a magical image showing the site where they were ambushed. The vision overwhelms Arthur with emotion. Tears stream down his face, relief and joy crashing into him all at once. With the heavy burden finally lifted, he attempts to thank the creature, only to realize he doesn't know her name. She smiles and introduces herself as Sylvia. Over the next few days, Arthur recovers under Sylvia's care. He expresses a strong desire to return home, but Sylvia explains that they're near the edge of a forest swarming with bandits and wild beasts. She assures him that she knows a safe path, but notes that creating a spatial portal requires careful preparation. Understanding the situation, Arthur begins to train right away. Sylvia appreciates his drive and remarks that children should stay active. Yet, Arthur can't help but notice how guarded Sylvia is. She never talks about herself. Her monstrous appearance has even startled him more than once, like a living jump scare. Still, beneath the surface, he senses an unmistakable warmth and kindness. One day, as Arthur meditates, Sylvia observes something intriguing. She realizes that he already possesses a mana core despite his young age. Curious, she asks him to try something. Then, right before his eyes, she creates a spell in one hand while simultaneously gathering mana. Arthur is stunned. She's drawing energy and casting at the same time, something he didn't even think was possible. Sylvia explains that humans often treat mana as something rigid, only storing and using it. But for mana beasts like her, such techniques are second nature. She then asks Arthur if he wants to learn this ability. Without hesitation, Arthur agrees, but before she teaches him, Sylvia asks a serious question. What does he plan to do with that power? She makes it clear that she refuses to pass on strength to someone who might misuse it. Arthur thinks for a moment, then recalls the recent ambush. He declares that he'll use his power to kill anyone who tries to take away what matters to him. Sylvia doesn't accept that answer. With a flick of her finger, she strikes him again and scolds him. That wasn't what she was hoping to hear. Arthur pushes back, arguing that fighting and killing enemies is necessary. That mindset made him the strongest king in his past life. But Sylvia isn't convinced. She urges him not to throw away the life she saved on hate and revenge. With surprising tenderness, she strokes his face with a clawed hand and tells him that she could easily end his life if she wanted to, but she'd rather pat his head instead. Arthur blushes, flustered, and admits he'd prefer that too. Sylvia smiles, calling it the better choice. She tells him that anger and hatred are easy to ignite, but they leave nothing behind. She wants a better path for him. Then she asks once more, what will he do with his power? This time, Arthur reflects deeply. He remembers peaceful moments with his parents and the adventures he shared with the Twin Horns party. With newfound clarity, he answers that he wants to use his strength to protect the people he loves. Sylvia finally hears the answer she was waiting for. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the forest, another creature much like Sylvia roams silently. It senses her presence and knows that she cannot hide. Rising into the air, it continues its search, but its true intent remains a mystery. The scene shifts again, this time to Arthur's past life. Back then, he was known as King Gray. One day, he left his chambers to visit an influential noble within the castle. Although he held the title of king, real power resided with the parliament. With dwindling resources and declining birth rates, kings had been reduced to weapons of war. During the visit, the noble flattered him, praising his conquests and celebrating the wealth and glory his brutal victories had brought. Then, with a curious tone, the noble asked what brought the great King Gray to his home. Gray said nothing. Without a word, he turned around and walked away. After that, we see a shattered display case. A crown lies broken on the ground, and next to it, a sword is stabbed into the floor. Back in the present, Sylvia is teaching Arthur how to use magic by gathering mana. He needs to collect it while using it, and once he can do that, his magical abilities will expand significantly. Arthur struggles to stay focused, but he keeps repeating to himself that he can't rush. He has to stay in control. We flash back to his past during a training match. There was so much he didn't have back then. What he wanted most was to control mana, to win, to improve. That experience fuels him, and he finally succeeds in activating the skill. He's thrilled. Sylvia congratulates him, but when he walks toward her, she suddenly punches him into a pile of rocks. He's completely confused, even more so when he realizes he's wrapped in some kind of magic barrier. Sylvia tells him to stay quiet, so Arthur just peeks through a hole between the rocks to see what's happening. That's when a mysterious figure suddenly appears, the one who had been searching for her. Arthur wonders who he is. Even though he looks like Sylvia, he gives off a completely different, threatening vibe. Sylvia says she's surprised he found her, and the man responds that the pain in her blood led him there. He cuts straight to the point. He wants her to come with him. Sylvia refuses without hesitation. The man sighs and says he didn't want to use violence, but he's okay with it. He quickly charges up a powerful dark energy attack and fires it at her. Though Sylvia blocks the attack, the force overwhelms her. She collapses, weak and unable to hold her ground. In her injured state, she sends a telepathic message to Arthur, telling him not to worry. Arthur quietly keeps watching. The man warns Sylvia that if she pushes herself, she'll only shorten the little time she has left to live. But Sylvia snaps back that the same goes for him. Suddenly, her entire body starts to transform. In just a few seconds, she reveals her true form, a magnificent white dragon. The moment she takes that form, she unleashes a devastating energy breath, which the man struggles to block. He warns her that using such power will cost her, but Sylvia says it doesn't matter. She's already been happy. Though she admits she wished it could have lasted longer. The man manages to deflect her breath attack, but the force causes the cave to begin collapsing. Acting quickly, he casts a spell to stop the cave-in. It's a magical blast that explodes in all directions. Sylvia shields herself with her wings, but since the attack covers such a wide area, she quickly checks to make sure Arthur is still hidden and safe behind the rocks. When she sees he's unharmed, she feels a huge wave of relief. But that split-second distraction gives the enemy a chance to charge another wave of dark energy. Sylvia clearly doesn't like what she's seeing. The man throws the energy sphere at her, and in response, Sylvia activates a time-freezing ability. Arthur isn't affected by the spell, so Sylvia calls him over. Arthur walks up and asks what's going on. Sylvia explains that she used her power, but more importantly, she wants to know what he thinks of her new form. Arthur guesses she's a dragon, and she confirms it, though that's just what humans call them. Putting that aside, she tells him they need to move quickly. She opens a portal and apologizes for not being able to bring him closer to safety. Still, she reassures him that he'll be okay. He's learned enough to survive. Before saying goodbye, she asks what he plans to use his powers for. Arthur answers, with some pain in his voice, that he wants to protect the people he loves. Sylvia accepts that as a promise. Arthur then notices her injury and starts to worry. To shift his focus, Sylvia tells him she has something for him, a strange-looking egg and a feather. She instructs him to wrap the egg in the feather and protect it with his life. Then she gently presses her nose against him, which causes 2 glowing marks to appear on his arms. Arthur asks what they are, but Sylvia, weakening, just says he'll find out in time. It's time to say goodbye. But before he leaves, Sylvia confesses she could have sent him home earlier. She just didn't want to. She enjoyed living in this world with him too much. Feeling sad, Arthur asks if he can use his powers to protect her now. Despite everything she taught him and the promise they made, Sylvia explains that this outcome was always going to happen. Their promise doesn't apply here. Arthur is surprised by how calm his next words sound. He wonders if it's his gratitude or the time they spent together that changed him. He tells her that he doesn't care if she's a dragon or a monster. She's family to him. Sylvia reminds him that he already has a mother, so Arthur decides to call her Grandma instead. She's taken aback, but after a moment asks him to say it again. He does, with a big smile. Sylvia can't help but smile back and thank him. But with time running out, she pushes him into the portal. Arthur holds on to the egg and feather, stepping into the portal, but just before it closes, he turns around and says he doesn't want to leave, he wants her to come with him. The portal shuts just as he says it, and he's forced to leave her behind. Once Arthur is gone, Sylvia lets the time-freezing magic end. Since she hasn't moved from her spot, the dark energy attack hits her directly, knocking her to the ground. Despite her condition, the enemy doubts that the attack was enough to kill her. That's when Sylvia proves him right. She launches a surprise counterattack at close range. The blast is massive, shaking the forest. We then cut to two mysterious individuals talking. One of them says she's done enough and agrees to handle the rest. Everything now rests in her hands. As Arthur travels through the portal, he speaks with Sylvia one last time. He tells her he's sad. Sylvia reminds him that this world is full of pain, but that's exactly why they must turn pain into happiness. And it's okay if he can't do that yet. Step by step, he'll get there, because he's the strongest king of all. Finally, she tells him not to let hate and rage fill his heart and to let the light guide his new life. She calls him King Gray, revealing that she knew about his past life. Arthur is shocked. Could she be the one who brought him to this world? He wakes up alone in a forest as he hears a noise from the bushes. Tears are still streaming down his face. And that's it for today's episode.